Hi, welcome to my video on solving linear equations. We're going to solve by moving the variables and or the numbers to different sides by adding on the opposite. When solving, I will place the variables on the left side and I'll place the numbers on the right side. When moving variables to the left side and the numbers to the right side, add on the opposite to each side. Recall, the opposite of 4, -4. The opposite of -6, 6. The opposite of 3x, -3x. So let's do a few examples of solving for x. Notice the x is on the left, which is where I want it, but the number has to go to the right. So I will add on the -2. So I add 2, so I'll subtract 2 from both sides. That gives me a 0 when I add. And 4. Now I'll divide both sides by 4. The 4's cancelled. They give me a 1x, which is x. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so 1 is the answer. If you take the 1 and sub back in right here, you get a bracket. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6, so we know we're okay. The 1 has to go to the right side, so we'll move the 1 by adding on 1 to each side. When we add -1 plus 1 is a 0, they cancel out. I get a -3x equals -12. Divide both sides by -3 and they cancel. They give me a 1 and that gives me a 4. Practice means pause the video and work these out to see if you're going to get them right. Here we go. Double negative is a positive, so that's a +1 there. So I will subtract 1 from both sides. +1 minus 1 is a 0, so it gives me 7x. Plus 0 is 7x, and 8 minus 1 is 7. Divide both sides by 7. They cancel. X is equal to 1. And number 2, I have to move the -9, so I'll add 9 to both sides. I'm adding 9 to both sides to balance it out. Like a weigh scale. You're balancing the equation out by doing the same to both sides. And -9 plus 9 cancels out to give you a 0. And -31 and 9 is -24. And I divide by -6. 6 is cancelled, so x is equal to 4. Let's continue. Notice in this one, you have the x's on both sides now. So I had to move the x, this x, to the left side. So that means I have to add on, or subtract x from both sides. So if I subtract x subtract x gives me 0. So the x is moved from the right side to the left side. And a -3 subtract 1 is a -4. Divide both sides by -4. They cancel. X is equal to -2. Again, the x is on the right side, so I have to move it to the left side. So we'll add on 5x to both sides. So there's the 5x being added to both sides. And it makes no difference if you put the 5x in front or behind. You could put the 5x over on this side of the 12 if you want. But notice when you add these, they cancel to give you 0. So that's -12. And that will add to give me a 3x, and I divide by 3. Cancels, x equals -4. Practice. Pause your video and work the two of these out to see if you're going to get them right. Press play when you're finished. Double negative is a positive, and we have to move the 6x, so that's a negative, so we add 6x to each side. 6x plus 7x equals 6x minus 6x plus 39. Plus 6x minus 6x is a 0, so that's a 39. And that adds up to give me a 13x. Divide both sides by 13, and I get a 3. We have a double negative here, so we'll get rid of that double negative first. Done. Now that's a +5, so we'll subtract 5x from both sides. Subtract or add on -5x. Again, that's a plus, so we'll make it a minus. Negative 5x plus 5x cancels out, so that gives me a negative 44 on the right side. Add these up and I get negative 5x plus 9x is 4x. Divide both sides by 4. Cancels out, give me 1x and a negative 11. So now we have another set of examples, and notice this time we have x's on both sides and numbers on both sides. So that means I will do both of them at the same time, and this is where you got to be careful. I'm going to add on, you could do the x's and then do the numbers, or you can do them all at one time. It's your choice. But if the x has to move, I have to add 4x to this side, or to both sides, and I have to add 2 to both sides to move to 2. So if I add on the 4x, that's done. And if I add on the 2 to both sides, with double negative is a positive, we do that. So notice you're moving this negative 4x to add on a plus 4 to both sides, or 4x, and you're moving the 2 to add 2. So the x's, that simplifies, that's a 6x. And the x's are gone, and 10 and 2 is 12. So notice you add 4x to both sides and you add 2 to both sides to balance it out. And you divide by 6. So the 6's cancel and I get a 2. Some people move the x's first and then the numbers after. That's writing down 2 steps. But if you want to do that, a double negative is a positive. So let's move the x's first. That keeps it a little bit less confusing. Negative 3x, subtract 3x, plus 1 is 6x minus 6x minus 17. They're gone, so I get negative 17 equals negative 9x plus 1. So I moved the x first. Now I'm going to move my number. So that's a plus 1. I'm going to add a negative 1 to each side. That gives me 0, so negative 9x equals negative 18. Now divide both sides by negative 9. And if you find that better, then do the x's first and do the numbers after. Remember, the x's have to go to the left side, so you add on the opposite of the x's. The numbers have to move to the opposite side, so you add on the opposite of the number that's on the left side. C, let's move the x first. The x's go on the left, the numbers go on the right. So 10x subtract 7x. And the x adding on this negative 7 gives you 0 on the right side. And that gives you 3x plus 6. So I added on a negative 7x first. Now I'm going to subtract 6. And the reason I subtract 6 because I have to move the plus 6 on the left side becomes a minus 6 on the right side. They cancels out. And that's a negative 15 when you subtract them. And I divide by 3. So x equals negative 5. So do you want to move the x's and then the numbers, or both? Your choice. And that's a plus x, so I have to move it. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Again, the x has to move to the left, so that's a plus, so we subtract. That gives me negative 3x minus 18. They cancel out, and I get a negative 9. Now I have to move the 18, subtract 18 to the right side, so I will add 18 onto both sides. And that gives me a 0, so negative 3x equals 9. Divide by negative 3, x equals negative 3. 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Some people, I'll show you another little one. Some people just put the negative x just below it here. Go negative x on the bottom and then negative x here and then add them up. But that's your choice. You see different teachers do it different ways. So negative x subtract x. If I do the x's first, I won't get confused. Just takes a little bit longer. The x has to move to the left side, so I'm subtracting x from both sides. That gives me 0, and that gives me negative 12x plus 4. Now I will subtract 4 from both sides. That will move the 4 over to the right side. That's a 0. Negative 12x equals negative 12. Divide both sides by negative 12, and x equals 1. And again, the minus 2x got to move over to the right, to the left side, so I'll add 2x to both sides. A double negative, make that a plus before we start. They give me 0, so that gives me 15 on the right, 8x minus 1 on the left, and the minus 1 constant moves to the right side, so I will add 1 to both sides. That gives me a 0 when I add, so 8x equals 16, and then I divide by 8. Again, notice if you're practicing these, if you get them right, perfect. Just pause the video and work them out. So we're going to move the negative 4x to the left side. So I add 4x to both sides. Done. So that gives me a 0 on the right side, so that's negative 10. And 8x minus 10 equals negative 10. Now I'll move the negative 10 to the right side by adding on 10 to both sides. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0, so 8x equals negative 10 plus 10 is 0, and I divide by 8. They cancel out to give me a 1x, and 0 divided by 8 is 0. So what it means, if you just check, if you put 0 back here, 4 times 0 is 0, so that's a negative 10 on the left side. If you put 0 in here, negative 4 times 0 is 0. 0 on a negative 10. So when you put 0 back in, 0 is the answer because you get negative 10 on both sides. Number 4, double negative, we make it a positive before we start. The 12x has to move over, so we'll subtract 12x from each side. Oh, I should have wrote down the 7 first. Okay, let's put the 7 in here. Equals, and we're subtracting 12x from both sides. Done. That gives me 0, negative 20 on the right, and that gives me a 7 minus 9x. And I have to move the 7, so I'll subtract 7 from both sides. 7 plus 9x minus 7, negative 27 minus 7. I could put the negative 7 in the front, but it doesn't make any difference where you put the negative 7 as long as you subtract. They cancel to give you 0. Negative 27, negative 20, negative 7, negative 27, divide by negative 9. They cancel, I get 1x equals 3. Number 5, I have to move the x's to the left and the numbers to the right, so I will subtract 4x from each side. And 4x minus 4x is 0, so that gives me a 20 on the right side. And it gives me a 5x plus 5 on the left side. 9 minus 4 is 5. And I have to move the 5, so it's a 5x plus 5 minus 5 equals 20 minus 5. They give you 0 when you add, so 5x equals 15. And I divide both sides by 5. They cancel to give me 1x, and 15 divided by 5 is 3. Notice x's to the left, numbers to the right, and when you want to move them, you add on the opposite to each side. Number 6, that's a 6 is here, so 4 is I got to move the 6x to the left side, so negative 1 plus 5x minus 6x. Negative 4 plus 6x minus 6x, and they cancel to give me 0, so the right side is negative 4, and that's a negative 1 minus 1x, or minus x. And the negative 1 has to move over to the right side, so we'll add 1 to both sides. So there's a 1 minus 1, and we'll add 1 to both sides. That gives me 0 when I add. Negative x equals negative 3. And that's a negative x now, so that's understood to be negative 1. So I'll divide by negative 1. So negative 1's cancel to give me a 1, and that gives me a 3. So notice that was a negative x. What some people do, negative x equals negative 3, they'll change that sign to a positive, and they'll change that to a positive. What they're really doing is dividing both sides by negative 1. But I'm showing the negative 1. So you put the 1 there and divide by negative 1, and then you can see everything is okay. That's solving when the x's have to go on the left side and the numbers on the right. We solve by moving, adding on the opposite to each side. If you like the video, then click the like button. And if you're not a subscriber, click the subscribe button and the notification bell, because there's more videos coming your way. Write a comment on my video if you're a subscriber. And you visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com. And there you'll have information in 3 sections. Me, my degrees and teaching experience. My videos section has what strategies I'm going to use to help you learn the math. And the section on content has the topics and the number of videos on each topic. The black font is what's online right now on my YouTube channel. And what's on in red font will be done in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.